Coming up with our fifth to final fight of the night, we've got Shavkat Rakhmonov going right up the division. Now 17-0, undefeated, 5-0 in the UFC, facing longtime UFC veteran and fellow South Carolinian Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy, now a veteran in his career, famous for his kickboxing. Everyone knows it. Turns 41 in February, so getting up there in years, 11, almost 12 years older than Shavkat Rakhmonov. If my math is right there. And
11 years.
11 years, yeah. And so it's going to come down to whether or not he can keep it on the feet or whether or not Shavkat's going to be able to take him down. And while it is not that simple as far as Shavkat's skills, that is where he is elite. And that's where the master of sport in combat sambo and the master of sport in MMA is at his best, is when he's able to implement that takedown. And his striking continues to be more refined. He's getting more technical there, but the power has always been a problem for his opponents. And if he's able to land it, your lights very well might get shut out. So should be an interesting fight. Shavkat is heavily favored, as he should be. But Andy, Ben, would love to hear y'all's thoughts. Andy, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's a bit sad for Wonderboy here because he was supposed to fight Michel Pereira back in July on that super card, the one for the BMF belt, where all those main event fights were electric. And then Pereira had that egregious weight miss. And I just feel bad because Wonderboy's 40, right? He doesn't have a ton of opportunities to have fights like this until it was bound for something like this to happen where such an electrifying prospect like Shavkat was going to come in and just light him up. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at, where when a fight goes to the ground, Wonderboy looks useless. When it stays on the feet, he is going to look impressive and hold his own. Like we saw him really piece up and make Kevin Holland have to retire, which was an awesome way to end. I think that was one of the last cards last year. That was a really fun fight, but that's just not one of these, man. Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's not going to be one for him that he's just magically going to be good on the ground. And that's where Shavkat's probably going to butter him up. Ben, I can tell by your nickname on the StreamYard that you probably have the same opinion as me on this one.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously the nickname Shavkat's the future of the division, period. Right. I mean, even if he loses the fight, which he won't, he's still the future of the division. I think at least for the next couple of years, he's still the guy to watch, and he's been the guy to watch for the last couple of years. So it's kind of an interesting position to be in. He's hands down the more complete fighter than just about anybody in the division, right? Sick, hurt, or otherwise. And for what he probably lacks in a little bit in polish, he makes up for with his heart, makes up for with his work ethic. His cardio's getting better. And I guess I can't say that for sure because the guy doesn't go out of round two. I mean, he's been out of round two a couple of times and, he just whoops everyone's ass, pronto. So I feel like he's kind of got this Sarukian kind of vibe as well. Obviously, in the welterweight division, but they've got these veteran badasses, on the rankings above them, but they both seem to progress exponentially compared to every other fighter in the division, every single fight. Right. And they're already afraid of nobody. So it's one of those things where I feel like, just like Sarukian, he's the future, despite there being a congested top five, right, in the respective divisions. I also think if you're anyone other than Kevin Holland, a kick or two from Wonderboy, and it can be lights out. You know what I mean? So Kevin Holland, I don't even know how the guy is still alive, to be honest, let alone standing in the fight, because he took at least, I think I counted at least 25 shots to the head in one round. It was unreal, right? So unless you're, Kevin Holland, you probably go lights out one or two kicks from Wonderboy. But you're right, he's 40, 41. And, Shavkat showed he could take some heavy hits, right? His first round with Jeff Neal in UFC 285-ish was probably one of the more fun rounds of MMA I think I've watched in the last year or two. I mean, it was just a fun fight. And Jeff Neal's got some crisp boxing, right? To say that, I get it, kickboxer, he's fighting here, on this card, but in that fight, he showed he could take a hit to the chin, right? He showed he could take a hit to the temple, and he still, stood up. He was smiling after a bunch of them. So I think it's pretty interesting to be able to see that kind of thing, and he really does egg the guys on. Obviously, the odds makers like Shavkat here. The lines are pretty absurd, but I don't know that my play particularly factors as heavily on that. So I originally took him as part of a 4-fight parlay. I had winners in this order: Volkanovski, which was negative 195 against Topuria. Then I had Strickland, negative 150 against Duplessis. I had Rakhmonov negative 550s when I locked it in, which I'm glad I locked it earlier, but I've also made another bet here. And then I had Arman Tsarukyan, which already, that leg already paid off for me at negative 275 against Darush. So I've replaced that play with another parlay, which I think makes probably just as much sense. And it's not going to be groundbreaking because it's all, obvious favorites here. But I've taken Shavkat at negative 650, Sean O'Malley at negative 220 in his main event.
I love that
card.
one.
Volkanovski at negative 185, and then Strickland at negative 150 against Duplessis. That's at plus 331 for those 3 fights. I just don't see any of those fights. The only one that I'm sort of questionable on is the Strickland, and I know I'm going into the weeds here on Shavkat, but the only one I'm kind of questioning is the fight with Duplessis and Strickland, because I know Duplessis just got his nose fixed, and it seems like there could be some interesting things there. But I think the only way you can play Shavkat here, unfortunately, is you got to play it in an awkward ass parlay that probably stretches out because you're just not going to get any value for it. And I just don't see Wonder Boy, as fun as he has been to watch in the last couple of years, I just don't think he has a chance. So I'll shut up now and see what you guys have to say.
I think it's very funny that on the same card, I've got the fade the cold sore play, and you've got the fade the nose job play. So I'm glad that we're going that route. I've got Shavkat to win the fight as well. I don't think there's any chance in the world for Wonder Boy, unfortunately, but salute to a great career. I don't know if this will be the last one for him or not. I mean, he seems like he's still in high spirits despite the age. He still looks like a freak of nature and shape. But, yeah, no play for me on this one because I was going to eye the submission and inside the distance odds. Just not what I'm looking for in that market. Rick, what are you going with here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a great read on as far as the pick at good odds. Minus 650 for Shavkat's too much. Shavkat inside the distance is minus 220. Still too much. Stephen Wonderboy's been pretty durable throughout his career. But I do think that Shavkat dominates. Thompson continues to struggle against takedowns. He's allowed 12 in his last 3 fights. He did 2 against Holland, who broke his hand, and Holland sort of required it. It was a little weird, but 7 against Bilal, 3 against Gilbert. But I just think Rakhmonov is basically he's what Muhammad Makayev wishes he was. He's Muhammad Makayev with power and with submission ability that Muhammad Makayev does not have. And so he is that Rolls Royce as far as a prospect goes that is continuing to add elements to his game and improve the weaknesses in a similar way to who were we speaking on earlier in the card? Goodness. Ignore me. He continues to improve his different skills too that he lacks and just really strengthen up those good ones. So he's the complete prospect. We've touched on it a good bit. I've got Shavkat, but no bet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to drag this out too far, but I do think there is a discussion we can have here. And I think all the fans think it at some point as they're in their fandom, and that is just the analytics and the ability to tap into some of the things that you can do if you want to do it. If you're driven to be a data-driven fighter, you can be progressing like these guys are, and you see it with like the return of Roundtree. You see it with the Tsarukyan. You see it with a Shavkat type of fighter where it's like they're exploiting every single thing the tape will give them, and they're really going to the gym and going to the camp like heavy, like saying, I can be the best in the world, and I'm going to do it strategically. I feel like this is the first time in this sport where you can see it across multiple divisions in the top 5 across the board. Like it feels like it's across the board now. I've never seen it like that. And so I feel like that's a greater discussion that we could have, but I just feel like it's so cool to watch fighters progress so much in between fights.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't wait to see where he progresses into who he's going to fight next after this one, because there will be a shakeup here at the top of the division. Either Rocky Edwards or Colby Covington will fall down after one loses, or you can take on someone like Gilbert Trino Burns if he wins in his fight against Jack Della Maddalena in March, or someone like Bilal Muhammad, who is the boogeyman right now that nobody wants to fight, so much so they had to make him the backup for the headliner. So a lot of different cool options with Shavkat for sure. But Ben, as always, brother, appreciate you giving your input on the pod. We are all rocking with Shavkat Rakhmonov on this one, and we are now heading into the title fights, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, we have the flyweight championship of the world between Alexander Pantoja and Brandon Royval. Stay locked in with us as we keep on going with UFC 296.